and welcome to part 2 of the Gundam Battle Assault 2 basic guide for Gundam Physallis. If you haven't seen part 1, please do so. The link will be in the description so it'll be easier to find. In part 1, we went over the basic move list and some combos, and in part 2, we're just going to go over usage. Physallis is a high-risk, high-reward character that can afford more risk because of his higher HP and the nature of his moves. A lot of what you're going to be doing seems like rushing, but it's also kind of zoning at the same time. Most of your approaches are going to involve setting up bazooka rain first. It's pretty much going to be your most used move because of how useful it is. It's basically the center of your game. What it is it starts out as kind of an anti-air missile. If you get hit by the initial missile, it'll basically do almost a bar, which is crazy, but you can block it for like nothing. It'll go up in the air and then shoot a bunch of missiles downward. It'll pretty much cover the screen, and your opponent either gets hit and then you can combo from that, or they'll block it and then you can either do an unblockable, which will do more damage because then you'll get hit by the rest of the missiles, or you could cross up with either an overhead in the air because he doesn't seem to have any ground overheads, or a low, and that could be the shield low, crouching high punch, or the trip. I would go with the crouching high punch. His unblockable is actually pretty good as far as unblockables go. It's still slow, but it's a bit faster than most because of how it is. It's instead of a swinging forward, it's swinging backwards. So I think the starting hitbox is closer to the opponent than it normally would be. His Mega Special is a little bit similar in use to Bazooka Rain. It's slightly less useful because when it starts out, it's like a ball of energy that it slowly gets bigger. And when it starts out, it's not big enough to hit the opponent when they're on the ground. If they're in the air and they get hit by it, well there you go. So it can be useful as an anti-air special, but usually your opponent's not going to be in the air unless they're coming at you, and it's a little slow on startup. It can also be kind of used as a zoning tool a little bit. I don't know if it really lasts long enough to be used as a zoning tool, and you can really only use it 3 times. And I kind of feel like if you're going to zone with it, you should be able to use it more. So the bulk of what you're going to be doing is just activating Bazooka Rain and just rushing in. And the reason he can afford to do this more than most characters that are like this is because A, he has more health. He has a lot of health compared to the rest of the cast, with the exception of boss characters, obviously. And B, Bazooka Rain, once he shoots it, it will activate regardless of whether it gets hit, as opposed to certain other specials in this game that are like this. And that's really the bulk of your strategy with Physallis. When you're being rushed, just be kind of defensive and try to get your opponent away with either a trip or getting away with a normal or whatever, dodging, just getting your opponent away, tripping him, overheating him, just making sure that they're preoccupied with something so you can use Bazooka Rain. And then that's your chance to jump in, rush, use an unblockable, hyper bazooka, etc., etc. Just do whatever you can. Any of the variety of combos that I showed you in part 1 will work. His projectile it's got some pros and cons. It's a missile, so it's a shell, so it's not as good as beams. Beams will go through it, they'll destroy them, and they're pretty slow when compared to most of the projectiles in this game. And it's only 1 to 2 shots. But he does have a lot of ammo compared to the rest of the cast that have high damaging projectiles, which is good. But the real reason I don't like his projectiles very much is because the tracking is really not very good. If you fire the heavy version, the tracking is a little bit better for the second shot, but the first shot is not very good. It won't track your opponent if they move it up, like if they jump or they do a boost dash. So your opponent can just jump right over your projectile, which you really not necessarily could do against like a Gatling, like against Zakutu-S or heavy arms. So you just got to be careful when using your projectile. It's not all that great for keep away, is what I'm trying to say. And keep away is kind of important with GP02, and if he had a better projectile, he might be. I could have placed him a little bit higher on the tier list, because a big part of his game is keep away, so you can use Bazooka Rain and then rush in. So you kind of have to be very careful and be creative. You can afford to make mistakes because of how much HP he has, and you can afford to take some damage at the cost of getting Bazooka Rain in and getting some damage in yourself. But you know, it's still a challenge to use this character and to use Bazooka Rain without getting just severely punished for it. And that's about all I have to say for just using Physallis. If I had to place this guy on a tier, I would say ever so slightly below mid-tier. He's an interesting character, and he can dish out a ton of damage with his combos. They're not particularly very long, but they will dish out a ton of damage. And he doesn't fizzle out in terms of ammo, because he has a lot of it. But it's really hard to hit. And there's not that much chip damage in this game, so hitting is really, really important. So probably his best, but not only strategy, and don't only do this because you'll get punished for it, is using his unblockable after Bazooka Rain. And you can dodge, or it can be dodged, or it can be eye-fielded and you can get punished, so don't just do that, but it's probably the easiest way to get damage in there. That's basically all I have to say for Gundam Physallis. Please stay tuned for the next Gundam Battle Assault 2 guide. I think the next one I'm going to do is New Gundam.